Join us on this week's episode of Two Angry Men, where Harvey and Mark talk about the Epstein files and Ghislaine Maxwell being interviewed. Enjoy.
There are a lot of people who are pointing to Ghislaine Maxwell as a very unreliable witness who they say has lied in the past. And that if she lied in the past, why believe her now? Welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast. Mark, so Todd Blanche from the Justice Department said that he asked Ghislaine Maxwell every possible question related to Jeffrey Epstein. That is a big statement. Do you have any idea, based on all the people you know, and you know a lot of people, what was asked and what was said?
Well, I know, I don't know Todd other than professionally. David Allen Marcus, who is Ms. Maxwell's lawyer, who I've actually done his podcast and am a huge fan. He's great, and he's kind of the go-to guy in that space. And I'm going to believe that one of the reasons, Harvey.
Hold on. I'm going to believe you know something. So at least explain whether you know it or you don't, because it's important to know whether this is Mark thinking or Mark knowing.
Let's just say that I know that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
That the subject matters, and the reason there's a second day is because Todd is doing what all good former defense lawyers, like I've often said, some of the worst prosecutors that I've ever had to face are guys who used to be defense lawyers. Same thing goes for judges. But Todd is doing what you would imagine he would do, which is he is going through methodically about who knew what, when, and specifically about this idea of the trafficking. Mind you, he has got a wealth of information. He has at his disposal all of the Department of Justice files. He's got all of the summaries of the civil lawsuits that have been filed and have been settled to some degree. He's got a pretty expansive portfolio. So he really is and has digested a great deal of information and is now going to her and questioning her as to what she knows, when she knew it, and whether or not there's any there. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to predict that she has not changed her story and her testimony and her position at all. She has always taken the position that much of what has been reported, much of what is out there in the media is completely concocted. And she, I believe, has and will point to, and I would bet a lot of money that David has shown the so-called receipts for why a lot of this stuff is overblown. And let me explain why.
When you say David,
that.
You're talking about her
lawyer.
Yeah.
Her lawyer. And there's been a lot today, I saw reported yesterday and today, in fact, about whether Todd and David are close or consider themselves friends. And I'm sure there's video clips of them saying that. Understand something. In this field, if you will, of criminal defense, it isn't a legion of 10,000 people. There is a kind of a coterie, if you will, of people who are the go-to lawyers in this area, Todd being one, David being one. I will tell you that one of the first things that a criminal defense lawyer would do, and especially in Maxwell's case, because she has a petition in front of SCOTUS, is you familiarize yourself with the record. So he knows what is in the record. He also knows, by the way, David, I will venture to say as well, knows exactly what of the so-called allegations are just patently false and are kind of plaintiff's lawyers' feeding frenzy style shakedowns.
Okay.
And that is important because a lot of what has happened here, a lot of this furor around Epstein has been created by all of the feeding frenzy of the so-called accusers.
Well, there is a lot of smoke and even fire to some extent. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein was not an isolated man. In fact, he was the opposite. He was a man who loved to circulate with lots and lots of people. And if he found like-minded people who were rich and famous and powerful, it escapes my imagination that he wouldn't kind of harness them into whatever he's doing because that's what he loved. So with that kind of backdrop, at least in my head, I know you know people who are kind of involved in this. I'm not going to obviously ask you to disclose who they are, but her lawyer.
Have I ever asked you to disclose your source?
Yes,
when
as a
you
matter
were
of fact.
coming at me?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've always
And
refused.
have you ever done it?
No.
Okay.
And nor would I even ask you. I'm just saying I know you have sources. That's all I'm saying. And look, her lawyer has said that she is answering every single question, that she hasn't asserted a privilege, she hasn't asserted the fifth, she is answering these questions. So with that,
So let me build on that. Well, you want to ask the question?
Well,
but
yeah, I just want to.
Let's build it a little bit.
Okay, so
because
there
when
are.
he says that, she could. And by the way, you have to understand that she has not been given immunity in the traditional sense. This is proceeding, or arguably is proceeding under what's called a queen for a day,
Right.
where you go in and anything that she says can't be used unless and until she testifies later on, and it deviates. There is no transactional or use per se, and I don't want to get in the weeds on that. But what David has said publicly, which is, I think, unequivocally true, is that she has not said, I'm going to assert the Fifth. I'm not going to assert the Sixth. I'm not going to assert the 14th Amendment. She's not going to assert, when he says privileges is wild. You know what that means? That means she's not asserting attorney-client privilege. David was not her lawyer at trial. David was not her lawyer in the lead up to the trial. She's had a set of very able lawyers. And if you believe him, and I have every reason to believe what he's saying is true, she's not even asserting attorney-client privilege. What that means is, she did not take the stand. She did not take the stand in her own trial
Right.
for a variety of reasons. I mean, you could probably guess
Of course.
why, right? And the fact remains that she had a whole lot to say, and it's pent up, and she and her family feel like she has been hung out to dry. So she has this incentive also to cooperate. By the way, we also talked last week, and I think the week before, about the fact that what is happening right now is exactly what we thought would be the smartest thing. Do you remember that?
Well, what we said was go into the civil files.
We said go into the civil files, but if you're DOJ, you're going to say to yourself, everything that Maureen Comey was arguably saying was not going to be revealed. By the way, let's set the stage for this. Maureen Comey, the now fired AUSA who prosecuted the Epstein case, prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell, and prosecuted unsuccessfully Diddy. She had filed in that Radar Online FOIA lawsuit. She was one of the two people who filed a declaration asserting all kinds of privileges. Well, guess what? The basis upon which she was asserting privileges was in case Ghislaine Maxwell had her case reversed. Well, guess what? That is all evaporated now by virtue of Todd Blanche flying down there to interview her. Because now that she has talked to the government, there is no way that, and she's not asserting privileges of any kind, There's no way that the invocation of the protective nature of the declaration by Maureen Comey stands.
Okay.
That's earth-shattering if you follow it out.
And I get that, but I kind of want to get back to what was being discussed. Look, there are a lot of names in the Justice Department file. I am told tons of names. Fidel Castro is in there. We said 2 weeks ago, we know that Donald Trump is in there multiple times. We're also told in terms of Trump that whatever the names, every time he's mentioned, there's nothing untoward linking him to anything that happened, on the island with Jeffrey Epstein. So that's going to come up dry. But a lot of names are in there. Rock stars are in there, big rock stars. So I would assume, and you would either tell me you know this or you think this, that Todd would have asked name by name by name, including Donald Trump's name. What do you know about this person? What do you know about this person? What do you know about this person's association with Epstein? You would think he would ask that, right?
Look, there is never going to be a situation that I can imagine where Todd Blanche went all the way down there and didn't ask her, did you ever see anything untoward about Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein? I just, no, that's not going to happen. He clearly is going to ask that. He clearly is going to ask, if you've got something, tell me about it. And if you've got something, do you have corroboration? And by the way, the corroboration would presumably be in the run-up to her trial. The lawyers will have done a parallel investigation. That is de rigueur. That is what happens when you defend a federal and virtually any criminal case. You're going to do a parallel investigation. That parallel investigation, one of the interesting kinds of things about federal criminal defense and criminal defense in general is you do not need to, and you have no obligation in a lot of ways to turn over any of your investigation as a criminal defense lawyer unless and until you're going to call somebody as a witness or you're going to proffer the documents or use it as an exhibit or anything else if it's separate and apart from impeachment style. And even that, sometimes you get hung on. But if that's the case, I think it's unimaginable that she doesn't have corroboration for the fact that many of the people who have accused Jeffrey Epstein, who have accused others, including people like Alan Dershowitz, that I would venture to say that there is absolute documented receipts or, and when I say receipts, I mean evidence showing that in many cases the stories are fabricated. And I'm not saying in every case, but I will tell you that I know that in some cases there's demonstrable corroborating proof that shows that people who have been accused were in fact falsely accused. She will know that.
So, to quote a famous Brad Pitt movie, what's in the box? She carried a big box. Are those the receipts you're talking about?
It's absolutely, she's going to have her attorney-client file. Your attorney-client, in fact, I'm shocked that it's only one box. I would imagine, given the unbelievable terabytes worth of information that were seized in that case, that were used in front of the grand jury, that were used in prosecuting the case, that she's only got one banker's box. That's the tip of the proverbial discovery iceberg as to the amount of information she's got. But I will guarantee you that what we normally would call her hot docs, the docs that move the needle, were in that banker's box.
So you said at the beginning that it's your belief, and again, I know you have sources here. You said it's your belief that nothing will materialize implicating others. You just said a minute ago that you think that a lot of these people, not necessarily all of them, will be exonerated and things were fabricated. Those are two different things.
Correct, but you can hold two different thoughts in your mind. There are people who participated in acts that are arguably criminal. There are also people who have been falsely accused. And there is also a phenomena here of where a lot of this has been blown past the point of recognition or tethered to any kind of reality.
So there are a lot of people who are pointing to Ghislaine Maxwell as a very unreliable witness who they say has lied in the past. And that if she lied in the past, why believe her now? So no matter what she says, does it settle anything? And does it move the ball forward for any possible prosecution if she becomes a star witness and is discredited?
Well, yeah, it's fascinating that you asked that question and you framed it that way, and I'll tell you why. I have never gotten over the federal method of prosecuting cases where they will routinely, in virtually every case, put on in a trial a witness who will admit to lying repeatedly, even to the government, even in their proffer sessions, even in a prior under oath proceeding. They will admit, and the government will still put that witness on who will embrace the fact that they lied before, but tell the jury that they are telling the truth now. You talk to anybody who's ever tried a federal criminal case, ask them, or more than a handful, if they haven't had that exact situation. It is astonishing to me, but it happens regularly, routinely, and actually the exception to that is the rarity.
What do you think the chances are that Jeffrey Epstein was just a lone wolf on an island and that there were no other people participating?
When you say lone wolf, that always, if you mean, was he the one who was doing whatever he's been accused of and or pled to prior to that? That's an interesting question because you could make the argument that somebody who booked a flight or somebody who did this or that, but we saw that in the Diddy case. Jurors weren't buying that, and people generally, if they're doing things that cross the line, are not generally involving others in it, just out of fear of self-preservation. So I don't think that sometimes some of these conspiracy theories hang together based on human experience.
So this was Queen for a Day, where
Correct.
the government can't use any of this information. She's just offering it, presumably, so that if prosecutors are interested, she can cut some kind of a deal. I mean,
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
really?
They're limited to how they can use it vis-a-vis her. They are not limited to how they use it against others. And so, yes, they can use it against others. They can develop leads. They don't have to do any kind of reverse engineering or source analysis unless it has to do with her. Outside of her, it's pretty much an open field, which is probably why Todd Blanche himself, the number two, the deputy attorney general, is down there. He wasn't going to kind of delegate this to somebody below him where the buck wouldn't stop. I think it's a ballsy, brave, and I think honorable thing that he's done here. I really do. I think we had suggested this a couple of episodes ago that they need to get in there and talk to her. And the fact that David willingly did it speaks volumes otherwise. David Allen Marcus, her lawyer, I think speaks to the fact that she presents in a compelling fashion. I want to go circle back. Who are the people who saying she's lying? And what are they basing that on?
Well, there are. Look, I mean, we're going to get. We're going to spend an hour on that. There are obviously a lot of people who say that she lied in the run-up to her conviction, and that she's not a credible witness. But one of the things a lot of people think, and I think is a fair game, is that Todd Blanche was Donald Trump's lawyer. And Donald Trump does not want these files released to the public. He's made that clear. He wants Epstein to go away in the weirdest way, saying it's old news, yet he's still hanging on to the 2016 election. So Donald Trump doesn't want this stuff out. And now the guy he's appointed, the guy who was his former lawyer, is the guy who is interviewing the key person who knows everything if there's anything to know. The optics of that are not great.
Yeah, but you want to know something? This always kind of tickles me, this idea that Donald Trump is going to hire somebody that was his lawyer, or Pam Bondi represented him on a Florida thing, or
the former U.S. attorney. Yeah.
Right. Harvey Dillon, who's head of civil rights, was the president's lawyer. You know what? Yeah, you don't have to go back that far in history. You and I, we're not called two old angry men, but we probably are. We can remember when there was a Democratic president, probably thought of as one of the great iconic presidents of all time, whose attorney general was his brother. And so
I get it, but you know what people have done when there's a conflict? They've appointed a special prosecutor, and Trump won't do that.
Well, look, the idea of special prosecutors, you're going to get me down that rabbit hole. Special prosecutors,
it's a fair question.
Special counsel, independent counsel. No, it isn't. That there is no need for independent counsels or special counsels, I think, because that presupposes that somebody is going to violate their duty as a lawyer.
Oh my God.
But hold on. We've seen, whether it was Ken Starr, ironically, who later became one of Epstein's lawyers, who was the special counsel during Whitewater in pursuit of Bill Clinton, or whether it was Durham, who was the holdover U.S. attorney who was going after the people in Trump 1, or the special prosecutors who were going after my client, Hunter Biden. There is something that is just wrong and anathema to the American jurisprudence system to have independent counsels or special counsels. I understand you could have a walled off U.S. attorney, but and I don't often agree with Clarence Thomas, but I clearly agreed with Clarence Thomas in his concurrence last year, I believe, where he was saying there is no constitutional underpinnings for the idea of a special or independent counsel.
There may not be, but in the Trump White House, the Pledge of Allegiance is, I pledge allegiance to Donald Trump for the Make America Great Again movement. And that's who he picks. And that's who he keeps as long as they show allegiance. And he has made that really clear, that he goes after his enemies, he goes after people he doesn't like, and he rewards people he likes. So if Todd Blanche, who is his lawyer, is now put in this position, and he's the one who is asking Ghislaine Maxwell questions, you don't think that is a legitimate concern of people who are saying, we're trying to get the truth, but how are these questions asked?
No, and let me tell you why. Todd Blanche, as you mentioned, was Donald Trump's lawyer in New York on one of the most bullshit cases I've ever seen in the
I'm not arguing that,
system.
but I'm not arguing that.
And he sat there and he basically had to deal with a completely manufactured, completely trumped up, pun intended, prosecution that was really nothing more than political show. And by the way, if I prefer somebody doing the investigation who actually has been on the receiving end of one of these show investigations or show trials. And the reason for that is you want somebody who's attuned to the fact, been there, done that, and I'm against it. One of the reasons, and I don't subscribe to the Alan Dershowitz, I've lost all my friends because I've defended some of these or attacked some of what's been going on. But one of the reasons I fall out with a lot of my friends and colleagues is because I went through Whitewater. I went through Ken Starr, later Epstein's lawyer, who was the then special counsel, who was basically coming after Clinton, both Bill and Hillary, whether they liked it or not. And I didn't like it then, and I didn't like it when Robert Mueller in their investigation was coming after Trump. I have been pretty vociferously consistent about the fact of you can't have these kinds of, we're going to hire a prosecutor just to go after our political enemies. That there is a solid point there. The problem you've got is that as soon as the one party gets out of power, they do it. And then the next party does it. And it's just a tag team. And it would be nice if somebody would say, and I think Todd Blanche is the kind of the guy, no, I'm not going to go there. I've seen what kind of nonsense this is, and I'm going to get to the truth myself. Todd Blanche, I'm going to go down there. I trust David Allen Marcus because I know him. I know his reputation, and I'm going to talk to his client. I'm not going to promise her anything except tell me the truth.
Well, two things. One is Congress is going to question Ghislaine Maxwell because they've subpoenaed her for next month. I believe it's August 11th. So we are going to get a second story, and we'll see if it's consistent with Todd Blanche's story. So I think that's going to be interesting. Why do you think Donald Trump is doing somersaults not to release the Justice Department file?
That I don't know. The thing that I think is the most perplexing about all of this is Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, recessing and basically shutting down Congress.
He did it because that's what Trump wants.
That's what he says. I don't know. I mean, that to me, that reeks of we're hiding something.
Yeah.
And that I think, I don't disagree with that. I don't have my head in the sand. I think Todd Blanche going down and very publicly and openly and transparently saying, I'm going to interview, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm the Deputy Attorney General. I think that that's admirable. I don't criticize that at all. I think that's the smart and the zealous way to handle this thing. I will be just as critical about Congress shutting it down because I think that does exactly what you say. You say, how does that make sense? How is that something that is going to move the ball forward in terms of giving people confidence in the system? But having said that, let me go back again because I can't emphasize enough. What has happened now is that in these civil cases, all of the pretexts that were used by the then DOJ to say we cannot reveal any of these things, whether it's on FOIA, whether it's under a protective order. I think about Alan Dershowitz saying that he wishes he could talk. How they can keep Alan muzzled at this point is beyond me, because clearly if Ghislaine Maxwell is talking, which she is, and the pretext before was we can't waive any protections because she's got a live criminal appeal, that has evaporated. That is gone. So this idea of muzzling Dershowitz, to me, is out the door.
No,
it doesn't exist anymore.
I get that. Explain why Ghislaine Maxwell is talking without a deal. I mean, this is her get out of jail free card if she cuts a deal. And that's what everybody, myself included, thought that her lawyer was going to do and predicate this all on some sort of deal. The way you're describing it, there's no deal. Why? I mean,
because it is not uncommon in the federal system. In fact, it's common in the federal system that you get a queen for a day, that you do a proffer, and the proffer is just the legal nomenclature for you tell them what you know. If they want the information, that's when the deal comes. The deal generally will come after you've done the queen for a day or the proffer.
Is it possible that Donald Trump would rather have Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony out there or not testimony, but interview with Todd Blanche out there, if she is saying outright Donald Trump did nothing untoward, then opening a Justice Department file to the public where they just see his name a bunch of times. Is it possible he's choosing option A because it's better for him, and that's why he's doing this, to just make the Justice Department file irrelevant?
I suppose a cynic could say that. Yes, I'm not going to fight you on that. But remember, I'm not so sure that the files themselves, like I told you, I think last week, I don't think the grand jury transcripts are going to move anybody. I have one way direction or another. I think people are going to be wildly disappointed if and when the grand jury transcripts get unsealed, because I think you'll see there's no there.
Well, the grand jury testimony is so narrow that it's not going to mean anything. And that's what
Correct.
Donald Trump said he would have Pam Bondi look at and possibly release. So that's just a diversion. That the Justice Department file is way more meaty, and the civil files for the lawsuits are really where there might be a mother lode, if there is any. But the grand jury, for Trump to say, yeah, she's looking at the grand jury, they know that. They know that that's hide the ball, and that's what they're playing by saying that.
I don't disagree. And, the longer this goes on, the more I think that the civil files, as we said a couple of weeks ago, become really, really important to the people who are interested in this. But I don't diminish. Ghislaine Maxwell is the voice. Ghislaine Maxwell is the percipient witness. Ghislaine Maxwell is the one in the room. I mean, who else would you want to hear from? Who else can give you
her?
I mean, it's her.
Yeah. They're making a lot now of this birthday book for his Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. Donald Trump says he did not write that letter. The Wall Street Journal says is a drawing of a nude woman where he signs over her pubic hairs and talks about the wonderful secrets that he and Jeffrey Epstein share. He says, he initially said, that's BS. I never said it. I never sent it. It's not true. And now he's saying, well, if it was sent by somebody else on behalf of me, but I never saw it. So he's kind of softening that, because the book is owned by the Jeffrey Epstein estate. And they've now said that they will obey any subpoena they get for the production of this book. And now we know Bill Clinton wrote a letter, Vera Wang wrote a letter, and there are probably 47 other people who are just shitting their pants right now saying, not even that they did anything, but they don't want their names out there. So there must be a lot going on behind the scenes with lawyers trying to redact anything that could possibly come out involving that book, I would think.
Did you see the interview after we talked about it? Because I had said the language didn't sound like something that Trump would use. And then I watched an interview. It might have been recorded before we did it. I hadn't seen it until after, with Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen had the same, and Michael Cohen has a long-time relationship, obviously, with Donald Trump, and is no fan of Donald Trump. Right. But he went through kind of the wording and everything else and said he had absolutely no confidence that that was something that was produced by Donald Trump. I kind of felt the same way, just based on having listened to him over the years, that the language didn't sound like something he would use. I think that Cohen said the use of the word enigma was something that he did not remember. Enigma was what he didn't remember Trump ever using. I thought that was funny.
That's interesting. However, it could be that somebody on his staff wrote something, but sure looked like his signature. I'm not saying he signed it or not, but whoever did it.
Well, how many times, Harvey? even though I know you work with people,
and again, I have not seen it.
I'm not going to talk about your people. I'm not going to talk about your people, but don't your people on occasion do a card for somebody that you work with or that you're close to,
Yeah.
and they come to you and they have you sign
Oh, it
something
could
that you
be.
really didn't?
It totally could be. But, the signature is going to be interesting if this thing ever surfaces to see, does it look like Donald Trump? And, he may just have signed it and doesn't remember it or
He
whatever.
may say it's an auto pen.
Then he gets impeached. So, Ghislaine Maxwell testifying before a congressional committee. That's
Boy,
an interesting one.
It's very interesting. There's some great legal issues there. Yeah, you'll remember when Oliver North testified in front of
Right.
Congress. That was pre-conviction and all of the Castigar style issues that happened. This would be obviously post-conviction, but while pending on appeal, what kind of problems does that pose if and when she gets a reversal of her conviction? Does it give her a 2255, which is if she doesn't make hay with the U.S. Supreme Court, does she then bring a habeas motion on the basis of new evidence or stuff that was not turned over before? I mean, it's just fascinating to me where we are in terms of her. But at the end of the day, I think she's going to need to either have her sentence commuted or pardoned, and then that will be how you get all the information you want.
But it depends on what information she's providing, because we don't know. I mean, Todd Blanche is saying she's answered every question. The answer could be, I don't know.
True, or I don't remember,
Or I don't remember.
I don't, or I'd have to go refresh my recollection. True, but by the way, you want to know something? Going back as far as by all accounts, I have not seen anything that shows that Donald Trump was involved with Jeffrey Epstein in the last 20 years. Maybe you have, but I haven't seen anything that suggests the last 20 years had any robust relationship whatsoever. So you're asking her to remember things and details that happened by definition, more than 20 years ago. So if she was not saying, I don't know, or do you have something that can refresh my recollection, that to me sounds scripted, rehearsed, or concocted.
Yeah, I mean, these are not things you necessarily easily forget. And, the last thing is, we keep talking about Donald Trump. It's not just about Donald Trump. I mean, people are trying to find out, are there people other than Donald Trump who were protected in all of this? And you and I talked about a case that we know of in one of the civil files where somebody went to that island and, according to the court documents, jet skied and then had sex multiple times, apparently, with a 15-year-old girl. We talked about that in the last podcast, and that a judge redacted that person's name. We're told it's not a famous person, but it's somebody, and apparently somebody with some power, because that person had his lawyer come in and get it redacted. So this is not just about Donald Trump.
I agree, but by the way, it's also, that's people who are being accused. Remember, there are also people, arguably, who are being falsely accused.
Right.
And I'll keep going back to Alan Dershowitz. Alan has fought for years to clear his name. And to the point, remember when you said that's not likely something that she would forget. Remember when he settled with the late Virginia Giuffre, what was her statement? Her statement was, I could have misrecollected or misidentified Alan Dershowitz. So, what's good for the goose is good for the gander in this
No, and
situation.
I get it. And there's certainly a lot of evidence that he was falsely accused. But that
correct.
But there are a lot of people in that file. And I think that's what people want to know. And you're right. I mean, do you release all the names when there are people where there's no evidence they did anything, and you put it out there and you know what happens, right? I mean, everybody lives under that specter forever. And
Well, and by the way,
and
you
that's
made a good
that's a
point.
legit issue.
Absolutely. And you make a great point. You said that the one person that we talked about who had his name redacted was not somebody who was publicly known. Well,
Right.
by the way, the development of jurisprudence in defamation and things like that, there is a distinction that is made between public figure and a non-public figure. You know that better than anybody, having founded TMZ.
Well, I mean, it's true, but I don't think this is an issue of defamation. This is just an issue of you put a file out there with a bunch of names that are connected to Jeffrey Epstein, and there may be people on that list who are, shook his hand at a wedding or whatever, and all of a sudden they have a scarlet letter on their head. So this is not a legal issue as much as it is a fairness issue.
Well, and also remember, this is somebody who was hired, I never get sick of saying this, by Bill Barr, the former Attorney General and Trump one's dad at the Dalton School in the Upper East Side as a math teacher at the ripe old age of, I believe, 20,
Right.
at one of the toniest Upper East Side private schools. So he had either enormous connections, which it doesn't appear that he did, or he had a great aptitude for math. And by all accounts, supposedly, this guy was a whiz kid when it came to math and numbers.
There
and
were
things of that
billionaires who
nature.
gave him power of attorney.
Yeah, I mean, apparently he had a skill set. I don't know if the numbers were necessarily always under 18, but he did have a skill set with numbers and with finances,
Yeah.
because clearly he made a fortune without leaving huge footprints anywhere.
Yep. Okay, my friend.
Always, I'm starting to really look forward to this, Harvey.
I
So,
grudgingly say the same thing.
I know, very grudgingly.
We kind of get along better now than we did before the podcast, which
That's very
which,
true.
by the way, is a dangerous thing.
I know.
We-
I'll
because-
see you next week.
Okay, see ya.